What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one armed madman. And with me today, we've got author and fellow anarchist, I think, Liam Begley. Liam, it's a pleasure to have you. You know, I
Thank you so much
um,
for having me.
I always say, like, I've said this before on the podcast, but like, I think that like anarchists, libertarians, people on the anti-government side of the spectrum tend to gravitate towards science fiction because typically, at least for me, and I would imagine for you as well, we're not happy with the system that we're kind of living in, right? And I think
Mhm.
science fiction gives you like a great blank slate to kind of imagine how the world ought to be rather than the way it is. Like, okay, like I've been working on a novel for a long time and it's like a post apocalyptic. So you've got a group of people who are kind of figuring out how to like live with each other, and you've got like an ex-cop that wants to start a government immediately, but he's also the laziest guy there. So it's like, hey man, no, we're not going to let you just come in and decide how we run our society while you sit back while the rest of us work. Like that's not
Yeah,
happening, you know?
why are we going to repeat the exact same mistakes as the last time? Like, this is how we
Exactly.
got into a post-apocalypse in the first place. Like,
Exactly. And like I always say that I've been an anarchist my entire life. I just didn't know it until I was like 30. I like I saw the t-shirts with the A, and like I saw it, but
hmm
I didn't know there was an actual like philosophy behind it. I just thought it was kids being, kids. And
Yeah.
once I became like familiarized with the philosophy behind it, it was like, oh, this has been me my entire life. I just needed somebody to explain like what it is, how it works, and no, you're not crazy. Like things are screwed up, and like this is the way things ought to be. So
Yeah.
my main character is like essentially me. We have the same backstory, and then I put him into a situation, and I kind of think to myself, like, how would I hope that I would act in this situation? So when he gets
hmm
in put into this situation, he doesn't know anything about anarchism. He reads about it later, but when he's first thrust into the position, he doesn't know. He just like uses his mind and like what's
Yeah.
in his heart and decides like this is the way things ought to be, and we're going to do it this way, and we're not going to let some ex-cop come in here and tell us how to run things. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's a really good observation that, like, I think something people miss out on a lot is that in a lot of ways, domination is a luxury. Like, you
Mhm.
need to have somebody already doing the work and have people already organized in some way, in some semi-efficient way, for somebody to walk in and say, okay, well, now I'm in charge, and now all of you are working for me now. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I think a lot of what, I do consider myself, unfortunately, more of the boring community meeting anarchist than the
Okay.
Black Mask and Molotov
Yeah,
anarchist,
yeah.
although I have a lot of affection for number two. But yeah,
Yeah.
the
Well,
but
I
yeah,
have both.
the a lot of but like for me, a lot of my journey towards considering was just what was work. Like, I mean, I read in your bio you came up a lot in the bar and restaurant industry. I worked a
Yeah.
lot of that when I was in college, and then I got into the film industry. And what was really interesting is that you can see the organization. Like, I always, the guy who's really keeping everything together, the person who's really indispensable to the team, is very rarely the manager.
Hmm.
And then when I got into the film industry, one thing that's really interesting with the way the film industry functions is that we actually have a weirdly, for an incredibly hierarchical organization, we have within two groups, we are fairly non-hierarchical. So one of the things that we do that's very clever is your gaffer, your chief of the electrics team, and your key grip, your key thing, and all the other ones, all the technical and artistic people, all have a number two, your best boy or your best person or a coordinator who actually runs the department, and they're not in charge. The boss is the person who's best at this job, and they are
Yeah.
on the floor leading the team, deciding how to do all the technical stuff. But the person who's building the schedule, making the orders, doing that kind of thing is the coordinator. And that's something that we do that I think is really smart, is that there isn't, the managerial class is still there, and you still have that sense of like organization and coordination, but that person isn't afforded extra authority. Like
Sure.
when I was a set decoration coordinator, I mean, I was running around and building the schedule. I was running the trucks. I was dealing with the buyers. I was dealing with our vendors. I was dealing with the clients. I was getting yelled at by the production manager, like everything and anything that looks a lot like being a manager. But if my idea wasn't good, lead dresser is not listening to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, and I think that that really informed a lot of my sense of like try just taking having a position from which you can look at authority and look at it and be like, well, when does this work? What does this do for us? Because you start pushing more and more energy towards just flattering people in power and making sure that they have what they need to appear. And I am in an industry where my entire salary would not cover what we pay to put up one writer in one hotel. And we
Yeah.
don't
Oh, I
even
know
treat
it.
the writers very well.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so,
So,
so like, yeah, so it's still very hierarchical and it's very much that sort of energy there. But there's also the secondary aspect, which is when we look at it and when you have this idea of like this, well, we do know how to do our jobs and we do know how to do those jobs without being directed directly at that. And we're all working towards the same goal. We all have the same blueprint. We actually don't check in with each other that much. Individual departments run
yeah.
quite independently. And that can happen because one, we're well paid or we used to be. Well,
Yeah.
we're still pretty well paid.
Yeah.
But two, we're highly unionized, which is another benefit, which has its own drawbacks, of course. But I will like this is one of the things I can criticize IATSE to my heart's content. Nobody else can criticize IATSE. They're like kids. So that's the thing. But you create this sort of scenario where you don't necessarily need leadership the same way that you have leadership in other things where it's very ritualized and it's very formalized. And it puts you in a position where you start thinking like, well, what do we get out of leadership and when do we need it? And what does that leadership have to look like? And does it have to be permanent? And I think a lot of that ended up informing my own personal views about authority and management and personal relationships and all the rest of that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it also informed a lot of the book. One of the things that's really funny is I didn't, I sat down intending to write a book that was explicitly just a fun space adventure. He was
Yeah.
going to be lost in space. He was going to
But you
go
can't
through a bunch
help
of
but
stuff.
like inject your philosophy into the book, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just there.
Yeah.
It's baked into you.
And yeah, and I think you're really right about how anarchism and other more radical political economies and political systems tend to gravitate towards sci-fi. I mean, Ursula K. Le Guin said that when um, when you're imagining other worlds, you begin in fantasy and science fiction, and
Mhm.
most people draw from history to build their science fiction sort of worlds. This is why, like the Federation on Star Trek, they never really talk about it, but it's sort of assumed
Yeah.
it's democratic. I don't, none of them ever vote, but okay. And
Yeah.
then,
No,
yeah,
they never like get into the nuts and the bolts of how things work in the Federation.
yeah. And then, but you have like this whole thing where like people, they just draw from what they think to be more or less normal. And
Yeah.
I think what a lot of really good sci-fi does is disrupt that and try to like get in the way of them. Think like, well, why would we? I mean, my big question when I got to the point where like they were leaving a planet, they were having to interact with other polities. It was
Mhm.
like, well, how would you run a galactic empire? Why would you run a galactic empire? Like you're going to okay, so you take over a planet over here in this one solar system. The center is 4 light years away. They rebel. You you're 8 years. You're
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
No,
lifetime before you can get over there.
there's actually like a Fermi paradox solution called the introduction hypothesis, in which it
Really?
says like basically you can't run a galactic federation because if there's no faster than light travel, if we're all like,
Yeah.
rooted to the speed of light, like you cannot keep these other planets in line. It's just too far away. It's, you
Hmm.
know, you just don't have the power to do it. So instead of allowing these potential enemies go and, colonize other planets and build their own fleets, you just don't let people leave your system
Yes.
because that's the only way you can keep control of them. I always say
Yeah.
that like I would be very nervous if there was faster than light travel, because the first thing that we do when we find some aliens doing things different than us is feed them democracy on a silver platter with the barrel of a gun, you know. Oh, these poor
Yeah,
aliens don't know what
yeah.
democracy is.
Don't worry, we're developing a galactic monetary fund to
Yeah.
help them develop, and it'll
Yeah.
just be a little bit of an interest rate on the loans. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
here's a thing called the
it.
dollar. You're gonna love it.
But this is yeah, and exactly. And there's so oh, wait, yeah. So when I was sitting there thinking like, okay, well, what would be something that would work as like a galactic polity? I'm like, okay, well, what do we have? Like, there has to be sort of a commonality. There has to be something that everybody would have in common. And one of the things I was thinking, well, okay, if we're talking about spacefaring civilizations, the first thing they have in common is that they're all spacefaring.
Mhm.
There are certain problems you all share if you're spacefaring, like the
Yeah.
fact that
Energy.
energy, radiation, sickness, like the huge lengths of time traveling through space, food, that kind of thing. And also, there's other things on a more of a social level that you might share as well. Like, well, why? Why are you going out there? If conquest is not an
Yeah.
option, then it has to be either for exploration, for trade, for cultural exchange, for social exchange. And you have different characters representing different species that all kind of went out for different things. One of the things that pops up in the book is our protagonist is from one period of human history that has moved forward and outwards into the world and into the galaxy, and they formed more or less along the lines of trade unions because a union in its purest form is workers responding in solidarity to shared problems. So, if you have more in common with your crew members to your right and to your left than with the planet that you left behind 10 light years ago, that your parents, your family, your friends, and your
Mhm.
civilization might no longer be there, you develop this sort of independent milieu. And because it's horizontally organized rather than top down organized, the union would look very different planet to planet and ship to ship. But there would be a certain shared idea, and that would create the platform from which a conversation could form. So there's a situation where the protagonist from this unionized period of history bumps into somebody from a later period of human history who left Earth later from them subjective and is part of a military organization. The planet has been taken over by a sort of I'm not going to say eco. They're kind of mean, but they have like some excellent points because the entire ecosystem did collapse, and a lot of people left, and a lot of people got left behind, and the people who got left behind are understandably quite pissed off. So
Yeah.
they've seized control. They've gone back into space themselves, but with a mandate that you have to live on Earth for a long time before they'll let you like join the military and travel thing because they want to make sure that you're socially and culturally um what's that the word for when you're made to be in a certain shape indoctrinated, yeah,
Conditioned, indoctrinate. Yeah.
conditioned, yeah. Yeah,
Conditioned.
so like and they have almost nothing in common. Like they can barely communicate. Whereas, there's another species that is also from a planet that went into space, formed something comparable to a human spacer union, and but they happen to be gigantic spiders. But our guy gets along with him great, can really
Mhm.
understand one another because they're
Yeah.
from the same sort of social and cultural and economic approach to space travel and to like solving problems. So there becomes like it was just sort of an idea of like kind of playing with this idea with like, well, what if you're completely on your own? If everybody's on an even playing field, there's no real one group that has any particular advantage to any other group.
Mhm.
Well, where would you get dominance? How could you dominate one another if
If there's no
nobody's
need
really
to.
got a bigger gun? Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no benefit to it. Like there's
Yeah.
no you don't
I
get
went
anything
around,
from it.
I went through the same thing. So like I have
Yeah.
multiple civilizations that interact towards the end of the book, and my thought was the same. Like these people have all the technology, they have all the resources they'll ever need. Like what is the
Yeah.
point of interacting with another species at that point? Like why would you do it? And the
Yeah.
reason that I came up with would was art, essentially.
Hmm.
Music, culture. Like these people want to inject new art into their system, and essentially like art becomes the currency amongst these different, alien races because like what else is there at that point? If you've got
Yeah.
all the tech, you've got all the resources you could ever need, like you don't need to contact these people for any reason other than like cultural enrichment.
Yeah. I mean, what else? That's really great because that's the one completely
Mhm.
irreplaceable, unreproducible
Yeah,
thing. Like just like every
exactly.
individual person,
And they
only
end
you
up
can write
like
your book. Yeah.
and they end up creating new civilizations from their own DNA. So we come
Mm.
from an older species that's creating
Mm.
like gardening species throughout the galaxy or the universe in this case. And I do
Yeah.
introduce faster than light travel. I've got a cheat code for it. But
Yeah.
kind of the point was is like they got to a point where they were stagnant, where they weren't creating more art, where they were just a
Mm.
technological species that had nothing really to live for. And instead of like just dying in decadence, they decided we're going to go on this mission to create more people that are,
Yeah.
they don't look like us, but they come from the same stock as us. And we kind of control their evolution in a way so that we're going to produce a being that is fairly similar to us in a lot of ways. Like we have eyes and mouth, like
Yeah.
it's a humanoid species essentially
It's going to live in the
and
same
it's
phenomenal
going to
reality. Yeah.
go through the same things that we go through. And the
Yeah.
original civilization, grew up in an empty universe where they knew
Mm.
nothing. And it was part of their development that they thought that they were alone. So they set up the system to where we think we're alone because they feel that they produce the best art and the best culture and they learn from themselves the best way. And I even introduced like, so I have the moon as like a space station because it's got to be fun. It's sci-fi,
I always love
and
that. Yeah.
you've got this being that's kind of like a watcher that's watching over everybody.
Mm.
And, there's like a wormhole inside of the moon essentially, but you can't unlock the wormhole until you have a couple of conditions in place. One of them
Mm.
is scientific. You have to figure out how it works. And they leave you a bunch of puzzles on the moon that you find once you're able to get there and find this pyramid and go inside and solve the puzzles. That's one of them. But then the second, aspect to it is cooperation. No more war.
Mm.
If you're going to
Yeah.
be a warring, dominant species, we don't have any need for you. So you need to evolve to the point where you are no longer fighting with each other. Like they can't get rid of murder and, violence on
Yeah.
the micro level, but to the point where it's like, okay, you're not fighting amongst each other's based on nations anymore. And
Yeah, like they
the
can't. You
people
can't.
who
Like you
are
don't want to create a dark for the dark for
exactly,
the hunter in the dark forest problem right
and we can't
away.
give
Like
you
yeah.
this crazy technology if you're going to use it to destroy people. And so the
Yeah.
people that are solving these puzzles are like, we've got the puzzle solved, like why is it not working, why is this thing not turning
Hmm.
on? And the reason is because you're an asshole.
I do like the idea that God creates humanity and life just because, just to have somebody to fucking talk to. Like that's just,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah. I mean, it's and like that's the thing is that like you get these questions of like we value like we look back on history and we value like great weapons technology or great national ambition or something like that. But
Mhm.
like really like that's some of the least interesting things we could do when really the
American
most
music,
important thing.
you know
Yeah, like where's the
like
music? Where's the
one of
dancing?
the
Where's the
one of
art?
the
Yeah.
coolest like moments in my lifetime was like right after the Soviet Union fell and Metallica's playing in Moscow for like 2 million people, and all these people
Hmm.
who hated America 20 minutes ago are all of a sudden just like rocking out and loving Metallica. And it just shows
Yeah.
that like you can't dampen the human spirit. Like even these people who were just propagandized and forced to like comply with an evil regime secretly loved Metallica.
Yeah, and that's the thing because like once you're put into a position where you can recognize somebody else as another person, as another human. I mean, like a big aspect of like the like one of the main villains or one of the recurring things that the villains always say in my book is, well, I am the X, I am the hive, I am the government, I am the fleet, I am life
Yeah.
itself in the case of one of them. And the
I
idea
am
being that,
science. I am the
I
science. I think
I am the science.
I remember a guy saying that a while back.
Yeah. And the thing about that is that like you get like you have this human desire to connect and interact with each other and build things together and build things that encourage and improve and support each other. But it's easily hijacked by people who can just claim themselves to be the thing that we are building. That way, well,
Mhm.
that's actually all me, and I am the country in the case of a king or some elected leaders. But so there's this sort of it's an interesting kind of thing that like yeah like through art or through work or through shared struggle you can find these points where like you recognize the person in the other person. I mean one of the recurring bits in my book is that there are aliens that we cannot communicate with just because they're too bizarre, like for whatever reason, like they
Yeah.
but we're pretty sure they're conscious and we're pretty sure they're alive. And some species are just sort of like are like, well, no, it doesn't matter if we can't communicate with them, they're not people. They can be exploited or genocided at will. Do not give a shit. And
Mhm.
then other species are like, well, no, they're alive. We can tell they're alive. We can tell they're thinking, and that's that. But like, what's interesting, like, so you have this sort of question of like, what makes a person? And it's not something that anyone has a definitive answer to. There's a one of the big villain of the book, in as much as there is a villain, is a species that travels from solar system to solar system in frozen comets, thaws in the light of the sun, and then crash lands on a planet, sinks completely, eats everything on there, the entire biosphere, reproduces in the oceans, and more comet ships go flying out into the galaxy. Half the species in the galaxy are just like, well, they're like a naturally occurring thing. That's just it's a hyper virus. There's nothing happening here. You can't
Yeah.
communicate with them. They're just doing their thing. And the humans from the more warlike environment are like, no, we're making war on them. And everyone else is basically just trying to is talking to those particular humans, being like, how are you making war on something that doesn't understand it's at war? That doesn't understand, it doesn't
Yeah.
conceive of you along those lines. And so there's this a big part of the book is just about trying to change your perspective on how things operate and how people operate so that you can more productively approach them. I mean, Temper, the protagonist, begins with a very rosy-eyed view of the Union that he himself barely remembers. He's significantly mentally traumatized. He has some of his memories, not all. And as the book goes on, like he still holds true to the principles that he believes the Union to function on, but has to be consistently confronted with like the ways in which those principles are altered and changed for meaning. I mean, the way and all of the other characters to some degree or another have to bend or twist their ideologies to accomplish what it is that they want to accomplish. And like one of the things that I think is really interesting about the way people use their underlying moral or sort of beliefs about the world, almost ontological beliefs about the world, is how you can kind of see them just get to wherever they wanted to get to in the first place. Like Temper wants to see the galaxy. He joined the Union to see the galaxy. Now, yeah, he really likes the idea of worker solidarity and everybody working together and all that kind of thing. But really, he just wants to see the galaxy. He's got whatever was going to be happening that would let him do that. He was going to sign on to. Um, the spider aliens are a little more mercantile. They chase profit, they run deals, they cut deals, and that kind of thing. And one of the things that's interesting about that, but the protagonist of that is like he's just a very curious person. So he consistently is like the spider is consistently getting involved in other people's business, and then just has to make up a reason for his own self. Why? Well, it would probably develop a profit down the line. I don't know. I'm just curious. But come on,
Yeah.
don't you want to see? At one point, he rescues the protagonist and then is asked by one of his superiors, why did he do that? It's like, well, we always, they're humans. They always get in fucking scrapes. We help them out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like them. I like humans. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I think they're fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good reason. We are fun.
Yeah.
We do crazy
We
things,
are fun. Yeah.
I was a dirt bike racer when I was growing up. And like one of the things I have going on in my book, it's just like he's talking to the protagonist is talking to one of the older aliens, and the guy's like, "You guys race dirt bikes in stadiums. Like, what do you guys are crazy. Like that nobody does that. Like, sure,
Yeah.
we have dirt like similar things, dirt bikes, but racing them in a stadium. Like, come on, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Like, that's why we created you, for cool stuff like that, you know? Like, we
Yeah.
never know what you're going to do when we make you, but you do different things. And the fact that, like, you do this crazy, unique thing and it's not even a very popular sport just shows that, like, you have
Yeah.
passion and what you love, you know?
Yeah. And I think that is something like, I mean, that is something that like is really, really good to acknowledge in science fiction, especially in science fiction, because you have this temptation to constantly talk about these vast galactic conflicts and that kind of thing. But like, do we have restaurants? Where do we
Yeah.
eat? How do we cook?
Yeah.
How much
Real stuff.
alien food can I eat? Because I want to eat as much of it as I can. Which ones will kill me? And
Yeah.
which ones won't? Yeah. And like,
Can I
and
make a nanobot that'll allow me to eat anything?
get
So
get on it, please.
I wanna talk about unions a little bit. So, like, from my
Yeah.
perspective, I think that, like, for me, I'm not a union guy. I feel like
Hmm.
unions are kind of a government within a company. And like
Hmm.
an anarcho-capitalist, like I think that, you know, private corporations should be able to do what they want. And like in a perfect world, you would have competition within business. Like we don't have
Yeah.
that in the United States. We have crony capitalism where certain businesses are afforded different, you know,
Hey man, I still have a
options
king,
than
so I can't throw
yeah,
too many stones.
yeah, you know what I mean? So like it, we don't live in a truly competitive market. Well, like we
Hmm.
live in this government enforced monopoly. Like I think like in an anarcho-capitalist society, you would still have like giants like Amazon because some people are just going to be able to figure out how to do business better than other. But I do think that like in a true free market, you wouldn't have unions because you would say, hey, look, if you don't like the way this company is operating, there's a competitor that's doing the same thing, and you're free to go over
Hmm.
there. And the more people that migrate with their feet and kind of vote with their feet outside of like this company is not doing things the right way, that'll force change
Yeah.
within that company and it'll either change or die. You know what I mean? So I was kind of curious how like you viewed unions, and it seems like a trade union is a little bit different than like a union within a company. Like I worked for a line, you know, working on power lines. I worked for a line company that was
Hmm.
not a union company, but like the main utility companies are union companies, and they kind of
Hmm.
dictate wages in a lot of ways because they have this big group of people that get together and kind of force these companies to pay them more. And like, do I like the
Hmm.
extra pay? Sure. Do I like the fact that, you know, they're forcing these companies to do what they want? Not so much, but also like utility companies
Yeah.
are not competitive. They are
Well,
government
there, that's
enforced
the.
monopolies. So you kind of
Hmm.
don't really have a choice. Like you can't go open up your own utility company. The government won't let you do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So tell me a
And
little bit
that's,
about your views
yeah.
on unions and how you came up with
Hmm.
this.
So that is a really good point. And one of the things that about that like taking the idea of like, people voting with their feet, that is totally accurate in an endless perfect hypothetical
Sure.
plane. The reality is, yeah, like as you pointed out, there's crony capitalism. Like people are geographically limited. I can't just pick up sticks and move anytime. Well, I can. I don't have kids, but
Yeah.
but that's the whole thing is that like so that's the first issue is that there is there is always going to be this imbalance there between like the worker and the company, and that imbalance can be addressed through unionization and through worker solidarity. And that would be my first point about why I'm generally pro-union. Now, the ideal union is a trade union in my case that goes between companies. So
Yeah.
I, for example, and right now I'm working for I think Lionsgate. Last year I was working for Sony and NBC. The year before that I was working for Disney. So I just get hired onto shows through my union. The union guarantees a certain level of skill and guarantees me my benefits and guarantees my wage. They negotiate these on my behalf. However, the downside to that is, as you well point out, it's effectively just like having a second employer. You could look at what I do and look at the way I experience my union, and you would be like, that's a placement agency.
Yeah.
That's not,
Or a
yeah,
government.
or a government. Now, this gets into another question, which is why. So from my perspective on anarchism, my issue with corporate power is I don't. I actually feel like I interact more with corporations than with my government. If I think of what I do every year, every day to
Mm.
reify power in the world, it's paying rent, it's buying stuff, buying the things I need to live, all of which is moderated by some sort of corporation, which is supported by governments and laws. Now, I tend to think of it that my version of anarchism is more about the idea of like I want to break up that monopoly. I'm borrowing from a friend of mine, but he always said like the problem is we got to break up the monopoly of power. So it's okay for there to be governments, corporations, unions, individual people, community groups, all of these plethora of things that all state that they are going to be in control of you and you work for them if you have the capacity to switch between them. And I think that's where the voting for your feet in a non-perfect world, in the world that we live in, really comes into play. Because if I feel like my union is screwing me over, I can go to a meeting, I can go yell at them for a bit. Nothing may change. I can leave the union. I can work non-union shows for a little while. If enough people do that, the union will have to change it, change things. If you're in a situation like you're saying, like a utility company, where there is very little opportunity for you to switch shows, and that's the other
Yeah.
thing why film is, in my opinion, actually quite well run. We can go anytime. Like I had a very early on in my career, I can't tell you the name of the show, but I was working on one where the director just would not answer questions from the art department about what he wanted stuff to look like. Like he was late, he never showed up for a meeting. He just swanned in one day and then started doing prep, but didn't really give a lot of information and kept just sending mood boards and not like answering direct questions like, which wallpaper do you want, man? It's the set's going up and we got to put this together now. And so the production designer just made choices. And then the director showed up. We started shooting the episode. By the end of the episode, the director's furious. He hates how the whole thing works. He was vastly unqualified for the job. He had been a commercial and music video guy. He did not know how to write shoot episodic TV, and it was a total nightmare. But he's the director. So our production manager, our producers sided with him and called the production designer into the office and basically started yelling at him. And then about 5 minutes into the conversation, the production manager just holds up the hands like, I get a job offer every day. Goodbye. And he
Yeah.
just left, took half the department with him. And we were really boned them. And you
Yeah.
can do that in an environment where there's a lot of avenues of power. And this is the thing about organizations that has to be kind of considered is that they support as well as they dominate. And so as long as the doors are always unlocked, you can move from position to position more easily. This is where I also feel like anarchy has a lot of capacity as a political philosophy in today's world, because if I wanted to be a communist, for example, I kind of need to live in a communist state. I need to the
Yes.
entire, yeah, it's very difficult to be a communist on your own. And if I'm a capitalist and I live in a communist state, it's very difficult to be a capitalist on your own. People
Yeah.
have to want to play that game with you.
Yep.
But as an anarchist, you can hold to that freedom within yourself and use it as a position from which you can observe and criticize other things. Like taking anarcho-capitalism as an example, there is a certain in order for there to be a currency of trade, there has to be some sort of regulatory body. Now that can be with competition, you can maybe make something
Price
happen. There's what was
discovery.
with,
There's like
yeah,
always gonna, and that's something that I deal with in my book is like price discovery,
yeah,
where you're living within a community of people. There's no overarching power structure. How are
hmm
you going to trade goods and services? Are you going to
yeah,
barter? Are you going to have some sort of money develop? Like, what are you going to use? Why is it going to work?
yeah,
For me, it came down to energy. We've got
yeah,
a water wheel. We've got, because it's a post-apocalyptic world, like, okay, I know how to build water wheels,
yeah,
I can build water wheels, you can get access. So it's kind of like an energy credit system, essentially.
yeah,
But
and
you,
the
you
laws of
always do
physics
have
are
to have some
universal.
sort of like
Yeah,
price discovery where
yeah,
some sort of medium of trade just comes from nothing, like
yeah,
something's going to win out.
yeah. And I think, like, I mean, a lot of my book and a lot of my feelings on anarchism actually come from reading Hobbes and reading Leviathan, because one of the
Mhm.
things that people mistake about Hobbes is that they think he's very pro-totalitarianism. And he kind of is. His general position is that we're going to form some sort of unit, of some sort of cohesion. And that cohesion, the general argument I usually phrase it as is like, if people want to get anything done, they have to work together. To work together, you have to kind of have rules. I sort of disagree with that one, but that's generally the argument. You have to have rules. For rules to mean anything, they have to have enforcement. Enforcement is generally violence, which is going to break probably your first rule, which is don't fucking hurt each other.
Yeah.
So as a result, you just created somebody who is enforcing the rules who is beyond the rules, which actually might be Sterner rather than Haas, but I haven't read
Yeah.
Sterner.
Well,
So
like one of the
yeah,
more annoying things about like the normal person's conception of anarchy is like I see people misuse the word all the time. They
yeah,
conflate anarchy with chaos. And
yeah,
anarchy means without rulers. It doesn't mean without rules. Like the Native
yeah,
Americans that lived in the Americas before white people got here, they lived in an anarchist system. They didn't have a
yeah,
government, they didn't have money, they didn't have rules on paper, but what they had was rules and norms. Different
yeah,
cultures like developed, and they knew that you can't just go in and murder somebody. If you do, you're going to get
yeah.
burned at the stake. You can't
And
just
that's
steal
yeah,
this person's, livestock or whatever they had. Like they had
yeah.
different like systems that grew out of nothing.
And like the voting your feet thing was really in play there because like you'll have like if you go back to the anthropological record, you have some groups have slaves and they're
Mhm.
surrounded by a bunch of people who are made up of escaped slaves who are
Yeah.
really not cool with slavery.
Yeah.
And you have these some groups have money. Some groups are made up of the people who used to be part of their organization, then they got way too into this money
Mhm.
thing, and I'm not really enjoying that, and they went and did something else. And I
They
think like a
had they
big
had communal
yeah,
forests where like everybody
yeah,
could go into the forest and use the resources, but if you go into the
yeah,
forest and you use sticks and branches to make a basket, that basket is yours. It doesn't mean that
yeah,
your neighbor can just come and grab it. And there was
yeah.
no rule on paper, but they just knew like that's stealing. You
Yeah.
can't do it.
And that so with Hobbes, like one of the things Hobbes's position is that it works best if the sovereign is instantiated in an individual person, but it doesn't necessarily have to be instantiated into an individual person. It just
That's
needs to
kind of
be
Hoppe's.
something.
That's kind of Hans
Yeah.
Hermann Hoppe's view too. Is like if you're going to have like a governmental system, a single rule maker is better than this like weird democratic system that we have.
Yeah. And like, but it can also be just rules and norms. I mean, one of the things with if you're dealing with a trade union or you're dealing with the spacer trade union in the book is it's just competence.
Mhm.
Like if you're gonna do something that's stupid, that's gonna get everybody in the crew killed, well, that's not no, no, we're not going to let you do that. It's not
Yeah.
about it being against the law. It's about it being bad for everyone, including you. And with the like you're saying with the energy credits thing, like that wasn't instantiated by law. We don't need to do price fixing for that. Like it's the laws of physics. I have the capacity to do work.
Mhm.
That work can be exchanged. And I think like you get into a situation where as an anarchist you can look at it and you can have an idea of how you can approach these systems from a more productive and a more personally empowering way. I mean, my favorite expression is that if you want to understand capitalism, you talk to a communist. If you want to understand communism, you talk to a capitalist. You have to be outside to be able to really look at how it works. And so with unions, and there are a lot of different kinds of unions, I will say that the modern unions that, in my opinion, have been somewhat captured by neoliberalism and like the Reagan era sort of 90s sort of thing, the managerial
Yeah.
energy is are very disappointing. My so my in British Columbia, in the province that I live in, most of the film industry is highly dependent on a system of tax credits. In
Mhm.
California and Los Angeles, shooting in Los Angeles is given a tax credit by lottery. So are given a standard tax credit, which basically means the government pays money that they take out of me for taxes for to an American company to pay me to work for the American company and then pay me and then I'll give some of that money back to taxes. It
Yeah.
becomes like a very strange
Yeah.
situation. And you end up encouraging, and I understand its function. I really, really do. And I get that in the at the end of it in the wash, this is probably good for the overall economy in the wash. But it is very disheartening to turn on the radio and hear a representative of your union standing next to one of the studios that is owned by multimillionaires that is you are renting from, and they're
Mhm.
both asking for an increased tax credit from the government to go to a foreign corporation. And it's just, guys, I need some of that fighting spirit back. I don't need
Yeah.
all of it, but
Yeah.
just a little. you can just get a little less. They're not your friends, and and so that becomes a little bit disappointing. I mean, and there's also aspects in the book, for example, Temper is never going to try to become the captain. He's never going to try to do that because this is very much from my experience of being a unionized film worker. We have a system called above the line and below the line, if you've ever heard of it, and it comes from old budgets. Above the line are all the people who are indispensable to the production of the film. They are people who, if you were to replace them, like a writer, a lead actor, a director, a producer, an executive producer, the film would change on a fundamental level. Below the line is everybody who has a job that's a little bit more replaceable. People like me, coordinators. The production designers should be above the line, but they're often below the line. I don't know how that happened. That was a terrible idea. DOP, same. So they're crew members. They have a job, they execute a vision. I can rise pretty high within my area below the line. And if I were to continue working in the film industry for the rest of my life, um, right now I'm an assistant production coordinator. I've been a PC a couple of times. I would probably be a PC full time in a year or two. Then eventually I would make the jump to production manager. And if I really just bust my ass, I could maybe make the jump up to line producer, which is the
Okay.
very bottom of above the line or the very top of below the line, depending on how you want to look at it.
Sure.
I will never, ever, no matter how hard I work, ever be a writer, a director, or a producer. Because that's not really, there isn't a pathway to that. That's like a
Oh, I
different
gotcha.
cast. Yeah.
That's the when you get into the good old boys club where you got to know somebody and have your
You got to know
in.
somebody.
Yeah.
You have to, it becomes like a different sort of vein of that kind of thing. And like the above the line people are all from the company or all from the American company. They're all from our,
Yeah.
our, our
I mean, this
sponsoring
happens
companies.
in
Yeah.
line work also. Like as a
Hmm.
lineman, you can become a foreman. You go from apprentice to lineman, you can become a foreman. You could even become an area foreman if you're one of the best guys, but you're never going to be the CEO of Pacific Gas and
Exactly.
Electric. It's just
Yeah.
there's no pathway to that whatsoever.
Yeah, and so there's a point where like worker solidarity also becomes incompatible with personal ambition. And because you are not really ever going to be able to take a command position. And one of the things about trade unions that make them very bizarre is that, but there is a command position. There is a director, there is a producer, there is a showrunner or a writer who I have never met before, who I have no interactions with, but if they walk into my office and say like anything to me, I got to do it on the spot. Like, and but like, and for a business that prides itself on being such a meritocracy in so many ways, for it to also be just one of the most nepotism
Yeah.
heavy
Yeah.
goddamn messes you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's really fascinating. Like that
yeah.
contradiction just plays out every day. And and a lot of that ended up being in the book too. Like they just sort of this sense of like, well, this is just another organization. It's an
Mhm.
organization with good principles. It's an organization where I feel like I have a lot of power and I have a lot of capacity to affect change and I'm listened to, but they don't necessarily have to listen to me. There's 300 people
Yeah.
who do my job. If there are 200 shows, hopefully I'm in
Yeah.
the first group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So from the outside looking in, like I've never been part of the film industry. I was in a scene of a movie once. It was pretty fun.
nice.
But
Yeah.
it looks like Hollywood, like it's gotten very, very expensive to make a show or a movie.
Mm.
And so like my example, I've talked about this before, is the Three Body Problem. I don't know if you watched that show or not. It's a
That
good
was the
show.
Netflix one, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a good show. The problem is this. So China made their own version of the Three Body Problem. It's 24 episodes or 28 episodes or something like that. And it cost a fraction of the price that it cost,
Yep.
you know, Hollywood to make an 8 episode series. And like the CGI is not much different. Like I
Mm-mm.
honestly, I liked the Chinese version better, even though it was dubbed and, I can't understand
Yeah,
exactly what they're saying. There was more there. This is like a 900-page book, like
yeah,
and turning it into an 8 episode series, you just lose so much. And like China was able to make one season that's 3 times as long for like
yeah.
less than half the price. So like what do you think is causing the price inflation within Hollywood?
Hmm.
Does unions have something to do with it? I always kind of
Yes
assumed it
and
did,
no.
but I don't know. Like, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, yes and no. We are expensive, and that is a reality. So that is the first thing to bear in mind is that we are pricey, and that will drive up your prices right away. You can churn out whole MOWs to what we like for what we pay for like 2 or 3 days of shooting, like the Hallmark movies and that kind of thing. What's driving prices in Hollywood is a couple of things simultaneously. The one, it is us, it is labor costs going up in unionized areas. It is also a demand for a higher level of production value, and that is always going to shrink us down. We're doing stuff in episodes that we wouldn't try to do in a feature. Um, so, like as an example, I had a show I was working on one time where we had this sequence where the actor was going to go down a hill on a dirt bike towards a river full of lumber mat full of rolling logs. He was going to ride over the logs, get onto the other side, get and then keep going, go off a jump and
Yeah.
go into a factory, all while he's being
Steve,
chased by a monster. We
Steve
had
McQueen
chase.
shit. Steve
Oh
McQueen
yeah, it was
shit.
great. And like I'm reading this in the script, and I look at my wife and I say like, man, that'll be listen to what we're gonna do with this year, like this episode. And she's like, oh, that's gonna be really impressive. I'm like, yeah, if John Wick did that, I'd be impressed. We're
Yeah.
a freaking TV show. We've
Yeah.
got a fraction of a fraction. So that's the first problem is that you're having a demand for a huge amount of money coming in. The second problem, in my opinion, is an outgrowth of just-in-time staffing and just-in-time
Okay.
supplying philosophies working their way into film. Um, we are all upfront. Where you have to give like all of our money, all of our funding has to come upfront, and that is the only way we get it. After the subprime mortgage crisis, when interest rates went to basically zero or negative, that's when you had the streaming boom. You had
Hmm.
all this stuff come in because all of a sudden you could get basically free money, and you can make okay. I need $200 million with no interest to make this TV show. Okay, no problem. That's great. I made this TV show. It made a whole bunch more money back. That's great. But like the pharmaceutical industry, we have to our wins have to pay for our losers. And so when you have that situation where you have all this upfront money, interest rates become a huge problem for you. So as interest rates go up, our ability to make stuff goes down. In combining that with a overall greater degree of required um,
Quality.
production quality and
Yeah. Yeah.
production value, and with the third thing being the just-in-time staffing philosophy coming in. So we will do things that look good on a budget, but that everyone making that budget knows this is not going to work. That we will build plans that require good weather, for example, and we know that that's not going to happen. We're going to get screwed at least once. We will have a contingency fund that we will make use of, but we're looking at that contingency fund being like, we're going to need all of that. But because of the people we're talking to, the studios we're talking to, the philosophy is that, well, you give us the budget that you need, and we'll give you the bare minimum you require. So we are working our crews to death. We are working in some cases, quite literally, we're
Yeah.
working our writers with no time. So we're getting drafts for episodes the day before shooting when we should have had them for weeks beforehand to really make prep, which means we're wasting time and we're wasting money on that in order to fit ourselves into a planned budget that everyone knows is complete bullshit. And then the last problem, and this is a problem that is not new, this is endemic to art and is endemic to filmmaking. Nothing ever guarantees a hit.
Yeah.
Nothing. You can get the best writers in the world, you can get the best actors in the world, the best
Best
directors, you can get
IP.
top quality crews, you can throw money at it. It doesn't matter. You can always make Anaconda accidentally. And it's just the reality. And it's
Real
just,
Steel. That's
yeah,
always one of my picks for one of the worst movies ever made. Real Steel.
sometimes it just doesn't work. Or you can make Obsession for $750,000 and it is going to make 500 million in its opening
Sure.
weekend. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And that has fundamentally broken the brains of the people in charge because they are utterly, I don't want to blame the tech bros too much for this because this has always been a problem with the studio heads, but the tech bros, it's a particular problem because they've all reinvested into this.
They want a blueprint and there isn't
They
one.
want, yeah, they want an Excel spreadsheet of market research data that they can hit the special button that's like
Yeah.
make movies. And
Yeah.
why doesn't it work? And they
Yeah.
don't understand that it doesn't work. And then you mix that in with the final thing, which is streaming is a radically different model of television than
That's where I
anything that's
was
come
going
before.
next. That's where I was
Yeah,
going next. It seems like it's
streaming
an
services. Yeah.
unsustainable business model because now you've got this democratization of streaming where there's so many different streamers. There's so many different shows, and it's costing so much to produce these things. People aren't going to
Hmm.
movie theaters like they used to. You know, it's
Yeah.
like you can make these big budget movies like all day, but like if you can't get people to go and watch them, like there's not going to be a budget for them at some point, which is sad because I like a good big budget movie. Like I thought Project Hail
Absolutely.
Mary was a great fucking movie. Like I thought Dune,
You,
the new Dunes were great movies,
they were
but it
beautiful.
seems like these movies aren't going to be able to be made here in the
Yeah.
future unless there's a massive correction in the cost required to make these. And I'm like, I think that artificial intelligence could probably help with that, where you're not going to have to spend as many man hours with CGI. I don't know, but I also think that like there should be some utility in going back to Stargate. You know, like Stargate's one of my
Yeah.
favorite shows. They did costumes, they did real effects. Like there was very few, you know, CGI scenes in SG1. It was just real effects, costumes, and
Yeah.
like good acting, good storytelling, good characters that you could kind of get into. But like
Yeah.
it seems to me like, and also I think the quality has gone down a lot in recent years.
Hmm.
As a sci-fi fan, I'm disgusted with most of the shows that I watch or most of the
Yeah.
movies that I watch. Like I've seen a couple, like I said, Dune and Project Hail Mary, like those were great movies, but the stuff that I've watched in between is not memorable, you know,
It
and
kind of just goes through you, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it seems
And I think,
hollow. Like we had some
yeah,
great years of like sci-fi when I was a kid. Like my dad
yeah,
was always showing me Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and Alien and like all these great sci-fi
yeah.
movies that I watched growing up. Blade Runner, you know, like these movies like aren't really doing the same thing anymore. I don't understand it. Like this isn't even
Well,
really a question, it's more of a gripe, I guess. But it just seems like it's an unsustainable system right now and something's got to give at some point.
well, it has in the past. There was the studio collapse in I think the 70s that had and before that the studio system in the 30s has also collapsed, but the war had something to do with that. What you are picking up on, I think, is sort of a symptom of that just-in-time sort of staffing of that Excel
Okay.
spreadsheet thing. It feels hollow because they're trying to
It is.
repeat what worked beforehand.
That's
Um,
and I say that a lot about music too. Like I listen to a lot
yeah,
of music and I go, this was created in a boardroom. A couple of
yeah.
writers wrote it for a specific person because they thought that they could get a lot of money if this person sang this song.
Yeah.
I think it's the worst in country music, by the way. Like I'm not a huge
Oh
country music
God.
fan, but like my buddy was over
I
here
didn't think
building and
I was, and then I started listening to like independent folk music and independent
yes,
country music. Like, wait,
that's
this
really good.
rules.
But like
Yeah.
the commercial stuff that you hear on the radio,
Oh
to
my
me, like
God.
my buddy was building something in my backyard for me recently, and he had just the radio on country music, and I go, God, I hate this type of country music. And he goes, why?
Yeah.
And I had to think about it for a few minutes, and I said, it's a stereotype of what like liberal Hollywood thinks country life is.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like kind of degrading in a way. And I
Yeah.
never really thought of it before, but it's that manufactured sound where a boardroom got together and go, how are we going to sell this the most? You know,
Yeah.
and I feel
Yeah.
like you're saying, it's kind of the same thing with movies and
Hmm.
TVs is like, how is this going to sell?
Well, Frank Zappa had a bit in his autobiography where he was talking about how when he started out, he would send tapes into studios
Mhm.
and the studio heads would hate them. But they'd be like, the kid in the mailroom thinks it's funny. I don't understand this. I like money and I have a business degree. I don't care about music or like music. And so they would just give Zappa a contract because the kid in the mailroom seems to like it and they would do
Yeah.
okay. But now the people when he was writing this book in the 90s and in the 90s, he's saying now the kid in the mailroom is now like help is now the creative director for the studio and he thinks he does know what's good and he's recreating and reimposing his own artistic taste and not allowing it to grow organically. The problem with filmmaking is as your budget gets higher, your requirement for profit gets higher as well, and you become more and more cautious. So what's going to happen, what's already kind of happening, you can see it, is there's going to be um, a schisming of the industry. It'll be kind of like what happened with theater. You'll have your Broadway shows, you'll have your big budget movies, and they will be made very, very safely. They'll be made with either new technology that they've tested and with writers that are established and directors that are established and actors that are established and plot lines that have been established. Whereas all the innovation will happen in the independent world.
Indie world.
Yeah, so you'll
Yeah.
have like so this is as an example, Greta Gerwig's Barbie movie is a big budget movie made by an independent filmmaker. And but wait, what's going to happen basically is she went on to Barbie. She didn't follow up Barbie with Barbie 2. She followed up Barbie with another mumblecore shoegaze
Yeah.
independent thing.
Yeah.
And so we will take money and technology from them from the upper level there, and then we will trade new innovations and storytelling from the bottom. Ideally, where this is going to get disrupted is the studios have a just such an attraction towards new technology that doesn't fundamentally improve the quality of a film.
Yeah.
The volume wall would be a perfect example of this. The LED screens. I shot with a
Avatar
couple of them
2. I
once.
thought Avatar 2 sucked. Thought it was
Exactly, yeah. Like
crazy. Like
because
and
he's
I
not
remember,
there.
yeah. I remember
Yeah,
when I saw that movie, I told a buddy of mine on the podcast, I was like, that is peak CGI that we're gonna see
yeah,
for the near future. Because like it wasn't a good movie. It was a 3 hour movie and the change event happened in the last scene of the movie. So it was essentially a setup for the next movie. And like, sure, people are gonna go and see it because of the IP, because it's James Cameron, because the first
yeah.
one was so great. Like, but the line I was always told as a kid was like, technology gets better, it gets cheaper, so you're going to have better technology within the movies as it gets cheaper, but it's not getting cheaper. It's getting more and
It's
more
not getting
expensive,
cheaper,
and they're not getting the
and it's
return on
getting
investment.
worse.
Yes, and
Yeah.
they're not
Well,
getting the return on the investment, which is the big
yeah.
problem.
We have one of my favorite examples is in Terminator 2 when John Connor's being chased down the LA River
Yeah,
by the
that's great.
T1000 in a
Yep.
fucking the truck
Yep.
is hitting the back of the dirt bike and
Yep.
you're like, "Oh, John Connor is in great danger." Now, in reality, both of these vehicles are moving at 4 kilometers per
Yeah.
hour and we've just sped up the film, but
Yeah.
that's a real truck hitting a real motorbike and he is in real danger.
Yeah.
Terminator Dark Messiah, Dark Future that was great. It was a really, really fun film with a lot of great adventures. And there's one sequence where they're in a plane that's going down, so it's spinning as it's going down. So the gravity's constantly shifting, and they're punching each other, both
Yeah,
getting
I
thrown
remember
around
that.
there. And I'm looking at it going like, this is all CGI. That's
Yeah.
fake. I don't care. I'm watching a video game.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be an issue because no matter how one of the things that's really frustrating about the digital volume wall and AI and computer animation is great. Our VFX artists are fantastic,
Oh, they are. Yeah.
but the best VFX is done one by a union house, but two, of which there are very few, but two is done in partnership with practical effects because
Yeah.
then we can really get our best work done.
Like
And the problem
Inception, where
is
they're fighting in the spinning hallway.
exactly, or in Jurassic Park, that was a combination of
Yeah.
animatronic
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
computer animation, and it still looks real. And I think that the love affair with the new technology is constantly they are betraying the quality of the work with the fantasy that one day they won't have to employ a crew member to do it.
It
And
doesn't have
the volume
soul.
wall,
You know,
yeah, well,
it doesn't have
we
soul
know
to it.
it
It's
doesn't
not
have soul, and
authentic.
it's just about replacing labor. That's the only thing they're really interested in. And so as a result, it's not when you get the volume wall working, when you've got those huge LED screens, we don't use it for anything. I've only met a couple of people who know in my city who really know how to shoot on it, and like they make independent film with it. They basically just steal time on it every once in a while in exchange for teaching other directors how to
Uh-huh.
use it. And they do bizarre, spinning, insane things that you couldn't do otherwise. But if you're just using the volume wall to recreate a set, we can build sets We know how to do that, and it doesn't cost us $1 million a day to do it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have an application. And the same thing with AI. You get into a situation where people are like, well, we can use AI to generate a whole film. It's like,
Mhm.
kind of, but
Yeah.
you have a camera on your phone, man. Like
Yeah.
do you have friends? Do you have like you can we've already this doesn't do anything to make a better product. This does something to create less
Cheapens.
labor involved. It
Yeah.
cheapens it, and then because your motivation, as you're saying, it doesn't have soul. Your motivation is not to create a better product. Your motivation is to create a product that used fewer people, not to make a cheaper product, but to make a higher profit margin because you don't have to spend as much on labor, and
Hmm.
instead you can focus all your money. I mean, one of the things about if you look at the actors and writers and directors who are coming out in favor of AI, Ben Affleck, Scorsese. God damn it, that one hurt. That really
Yeah.
hurt when I read that.
Yeah.
They're people who are already established. They are not the ones who are going to be threatened by this, and they're looking at this as basically a way to secure their position forever. The thing that's killing TV and movies as well, and the streaming product, the streaming model is part of this, is that we have access to an insane amount of information about when you stop watching, when you turn it on, when you come back, if you come back, what turns you off. And producers, I was talking to one of my line producers a couple years ago, and he was saying like he got called into a meeting with like the Netflix people, and they were like, this script has to be completely rewritten. That wasn't Netflix, actually, pardon me. It was another streamer, which I cannot name. But
Yeah.
he was
They're all the same.
I signed an NDA. But yeah, they were called in and they were chatting about it, and they were like, you have to change the script entirely because we know to a science that if the lead actor is not on screen doing something exciting within the first 2 minutes of every single show, people tune
Oh.
out.
Yeah.
But what they're really saying is that's what's happened up till now. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because then that's all they make. So that's all people expect.
Yeah.
And then you create these boring, completely forgettable, totally milquetoast things because
Yeah.
all people are saying is like, make me another Barbie, make me another Superman, make me another that, make me an obsession, make me a Get Out, make me.
Hey, people said that people's attention spans were getting lower and they couldn't handle long form things. And then podcasts became massive, where people
Exactly.
sitting down and listening to a 3 hour podcast every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you to your audience for
Yeah.
staying.
Yeah. I personally I don't think AI is going to help the studios much at all. What I do think it's going to help with is like normal people being able to be creative. So like I
Mm,
watched an AI movie, I guess you could call it, short film on YouTube the other day, and it was pretty good. Like
yeah.
they did real voices, so they like recorded themselves speaking and then used some pretty high level AI to do like CGI essentially for it. And it was a cyberpunk story, and
Yeah.
like it was pretty good for free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sure, it cost them some money, but it got like millions of views on YouTube. So I'm sure they made their money's worth out of it, or at least like
Yeah.
will in the future if their channel does well. But I do think it'll like I think there's gonna be a correction at some point where like Hollywood is gonna have to take a big look in the mirror and go, what are we doing wrong? Where did we lose the magic? How did we lose it? How do we get it back? And I think a lot of it comes down to like authenticity, like you were saying.
Yeah.
When you were talking about Frank Zappa, like the guy who's this podcast is named Too Hard for the Radio, and that's after a local Bay Area rapper's song called Too Hard for the Radio, where he was a rapper in the 80s and early 90s, and he could not get on the radio because his music
Yeah.
was too hard for the radio. And like his music was massive, and there's still like entire alleyways in San Francisco and Vallejo and Oakland
Hmm.
painted with this guy's face because his music was so good and it was so authentic that it didn't need to be played on the radio. Like it went from
Yeah.
person to person. It was all peer to peer shared, and you learned about it from a friend type of thing. And like
Yeah.
I I like what you said about like how technology is going to be pushed by the indie scene, because like that's kind of how things tend to work. Like there's a book
Yeah.
called like American Renegades where that like I don't remember the guy's name that wrote it, but like the whole book is about how like culture is is built on the fringes.
Absolutely.
It's not
Yeah.
built from the top down, it's built from the bottom up, and it's usually
Hmm.
on the fringes where like different tech, like a lot of the streaming technology that we're like using now kind of came from the porn industry. Like
Yeah.
online porn was kind of like the technological, you know, breakthrough that allowed a lot of this to go, but it took like fringe people to kind of push the limits of technology to change how we view things. And like I don't know, so like one thing that bothers me is like I don't go to the movie theater anymore. The last time I went to the movie
Hmm.
theater, I went and watched that movie 1917 or 1916.
Oh,
It was this like
yeah.
beautiful noir film that was like shot in one continuous scene. And like I
Hmm.
show up to the movie theater and it's fucking cold in there. Like I have bad circulation because I'm an amputee. So right off the bat, like I'm cold. And then
Yeah.
they have the exit next to the screen lit up with a light. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Come on,
this is like,
let me have the immersion.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like I go down there to turn the light off and there's no light switch. It has to stay on all the time. And it's like, this is like if I was watching a movie in my house and I left the light on in my laundry room. It's
Yeah.
like this is supposed to be an experience, and like you have this ridiculous rule that like people are so stupid they couldn't find the exit if there's a fire, which never fucking
Yeah.
happens. And like it
Yeah.
was just annoying to me, and I haven't been back since because like I've got a big TV, I've got a surround sound system. Actually, most of the movies and TV shows that I watch now I watch on my iPad in my hot tub
Hmm.
because it's more
Yeah.
comfortable,
Well, no, absolutely. Yeah.
and I just I don't I don't want to see the movie industry fall because I like movies. I like TV. Like
Hmm.
I enjoy watching it, but I don't watch it very often anymore because it's just not all that entertaining for the most part. Like I've watched a couple shows recently where I was like, this was a total waste of my time.
Yeah. Well, they don't have an ending. They don't plan for an ending. They don't have
Yeah.
anything in mind. Yeah.
Or it's
And
just
you
too
see
much.
that.
Like you
Yeah.
do an 8 or 10 episode series that could easily be a movie.
Yeah. And like I think you're absolutely right though that like, you can't stop people from making art. And people are like no matter what happens, like film is not going to go away.
No.
The It will become much, 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 much harder to find. And I think like also like I mean, I'm a self-published author. I'm only publishing in ebooks. And I think a lot of that is just sort of like there are communities of people there, but it's hard to find, it's hard to find people. I mean, I'm going on podcasts now because I'm struggling to find an audience. I'm struggling to put
Yeah.
my book in front of people. And I
It's a
think
big
with
problem,
filmmaking,
you know?
it's a
Like I
huge
listen
problem.
to I listen to books on audiobook every night before I go to
Hmm.
bed, and there is so many books on Audible. It's just endless. And
Yeah.
when I first started listening to books, like you got a ton of like you would go through and it's like, oh, this book got 5,000, 4 stars or 5-star reviews or whatever it is. And now it's like even these authors who have like big audiences already are only getting like 300 or 400 reviews a book because there's
Yeah.
just so much content out there. And like one thing I can tell you that you're doing well is like you're doing a good job of selling your book. I try and get a lot of sci-fi authors on here, and it's about 50-50, to be honest with you.
Really?
Some guys are great at selling the book, others are just not. And a lot of times writers are introverts and it's hard for them to like
Yeah.
come on a podcast and like I tell these guys like your job is to get the listener of the podcast or the watcher or whatever they're doing intrigued in you so they want to go and buy your book. Show me
Yeah.
how you think. Show me how you came up with these ideas. Like don't necessarily like give away the story because like people still want to listen or read and it's
Yeah.
tough. And I always try and get people to go and review the book even if you don't read it. It's because like the review thing
You
is a
seem like a
big
nice
deal.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like hey, go and review the book because like these guys need help and like
Yeah.
it's a bummer also too that like you work in the film industry and you don't have an avenue to get your idea into film. It's a bummer.
If I tried to pitch my idea to one of the
Oh,
showrunners,
you
I'd
get
get
thrown
fired
out
on
the
the
room.
spot.
Yeah, yeah, get it.
Why am I wasting these people's time? And
Yeah,
I think that, yeah, I mean, it is a real problem. But I mean, it's also like, I mean, I think that what we're going to see, as you're saying, culture gets formed on the fringes. And like one of the things that's really scary is that um, because of the stream model and because of Disney has now purchased the entire 20th Century Fox catalog, which means it purchased almost everything. Disney now owns most of film history, which is a little bit like if Penguin owned the works of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So and like you, but you can see what they want to do, what their project is. Because the other big secret is mostly with the exception of Netflix, all of these streamers are financial losers. Netflix is the only profitable streamer. Everybody else is a giant waste of money. The goal is artistic and cultural domination. You should go see Joker, and instead of Joker taking you to the original Kings of Comedy and Taxi Driver, which eventually drives you to Catcher in the Rye, and
Mhm.
getting over being an angsty 16-year-old, like you go see Joker too. And that's their goal, but it's not fundamentally going to work because you cannot keep artists down. There's 100,000 people, 1 million people who saw Joker and like, this is I don't agree with this. In the same way there was people who watched Taxi Driver and were just sort of like, this is like the emotions are real and interesting, but also like I don't think Bickle's all together there. I think Travis Bickle might have some problems and like
Yeah.
work and they go and they create a response to it. They create a further objection to it. And maybe that's in the form of something much simpler with a much lower budget. But like one of the reasons why I'm so critical of AI and AI in any production sense, I think you're right to a certain extent, like in animation or VFX, it can help out a little bit. I'm told by
Yeah.
people it helps with research. I have such doubts. But the problem with using it for a creative purpose is that AI is fundamentally derivative. It's not reactive. When I watch something and I have a reaction to it, I create a new thing. When AI drains for the whole human creative history and creates something new, it doesn't really create something new. It reassembles from minute little bits. And now all artists steal, of course, and that's good. But that even that theft, like I read a bunch of culture novels and tried to write an anarchist society and ended up coming out the other way as like a union book that ended up being like actually a little critical of unions for a guy
Yeah.
who's technically a big fan of unions. And
Yeah.
then
The Culture's a
other
weird
people,
series. It's a
culture,
weird series. I'm not a fan of The Culture. Like, I don't
yeah.
think they're as good as they're portrayed. And like, it scares me that like Elon Musk is going to fucking
Oh my
try and model
God.
society based off the culture. Cause like the way I
Yeah.
look at the culture is like the people in the culture are awful and they're kind of like
Yeah.
pets to the AIs. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Well,
And like
that's
you
the
can't
exactly.
leave you have
Yeah.
no agent like true agency. Like you're
Yeah.
basically like everybody in the culture is like a spoiled rotten trust funder.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because you're not, and this is the thing with the Federation and Star Trek too. People are like, oh, the Federation's communist. No, they don't work. It's not workers. And if you don't work, if you're not a worker, you're not actually in contact with how your society replicates and continues itself, which means you're expendable. And like, I think like that's something that I mean, the culture I have a lot of fondness for, just for if for nothing else than two of the AIs are talking about a warship that's going rogue. And like, I told you we had to put humans on that warship.
Yeah.
I know the crews don't do anything, but they level them out. They
Yeah.
keep them sane.
Yeah.
But I think like a lot of the problem I have with pardon me with like the idea that like you can but even that even like looking at something that I'm a fan of and having those reactions to it and wanting to interact with that idea and organize around it is something that an AI can't do. And I think that ultimately it's enhanced autocorrect is what I see when I look at AI outputs. It's like
Oh,
it's just
I've said for a
yeah.
while that ChatGPT is closer to my corrective keyboard than my brain, like by
Yeah.
orders of magnitude, you know?
Yeah, and like and honestly, like what really bugs me about it on a filmmaking level and on a storytelling level is that I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember Qibli? Quibli? This the production company. Okay, so for about 6 months, there was a company that was making what we would call vertical films now, but they were making 10-minute shorts that you would watch on your phone that were all 10-minute episodes of a larger series. And the entire reason they were doing that is because digital production, which is shorts only for digital output and only for online streaming, are given a different pay rate in the IATSE, DGA, and Teamsters Union. And so they would make 13 10-minute shorts, which is a feature, but they would just break them up into episodes, but they weren't really episodes. It was just union busting. And that's the pro and like ultimately that has actually that idea of like short digestible narratives that people can watch on their phones on their commute has survived because it's a good idea. It's a
Mhm.
great avenue for filmmaking, it's a great avenue for storytelling. But they weren't doing that. They were doing union busting and they went out of business, which was great. Same thing with AI. Like there are probably applications for artificial intelligence in storytelling. I haven't seen them. I'm sure they're there,
Yeah.
but all I've seen is union busting. This is just about replacing labor. And as long as it's always about replacing labor, it's always going to feel soulless and it's always going to end up making an inferior product because all they really give a shit about is how little money can I spend and how much money can I make. And if I make a vastly inferior product that still sells okay, they will take that profit margin is what's going to be important to them, not the fact that they didn't make a great film and that that film isn't remembered for all time and isn't making them millions upon millions and millions of dollars forever because they can't predict that. What they
Yeah.
can predict though is they can make a mediocre product. They can sell it to people who are going to put it on, not like half watch it while they're eating dinner or surfing on Instagram, and they will make a little bit of money and they will make enough money to get through to the end of the quarter. And
Yeah.
that is the goal, and that is why corporate made film and corporate made TV is always going to be heavily flawed by its own cautiousness.
Yeah.
But the
I sold
advantages,
pot.
yeah,
I sold pot when I was younger, and like
yeah,
I started selling the stuff that I like. I was from Northern California. I like the top shelf pot, you know. But what I
yeah,
realized over time was there's a lot bigger profit margins in shitty outdoor weed than there was
yeah,
in the good stuff, you know. And I can sell a lot more of this shitty stuff and make a lot more money than if I'm
yeah,
selling this prime time stuff for a much lower profit margin. And like
it,
the way I would like to see AI used within entertainment would be I would like to see it get good enough to where you could take your book, pump it into
mhm,
an engine, and say, create me a pilot. Create me a 5, 6
yeah,
episode pilot to where I can go show it to somebody and hopefully take it from YouTube to the big screen. Like there's a channel on YouTube called Dust that does like short sci-fi short films and like for some reason over the years they've gotten a lot worse. Like they were a lot better 5, 10 years ago for some reason. I don't understand that one at all.
and
But
sometimes the fountain
you
goes
know,
dry.
yeah,
Yeah.
but um like there's been a couple of films that started on that channel that went from like a short 15-minute pilot to a full length
Yeah,
film, you know. And
yeah.
I
I
don't know,
mean,
like maybe it would be good, maybe it wouldn't. Like for someone like you might like get the thing done and go, this, I don't like this. This isn't the vision that I had for my film. But for other people
yeah,
who aren't as critical, they might go, I'd like people to see it rather than not see it. And, you know, maybe there's
yeah,
utility in like releasing a book and, having an audiobook done with an AI generated voice so you don't have to pay for, a full-time audio narrator. And then
yeah,
you can link your YouTube channel within it. And after people read it, they can go and watch the pilot and see the characters come to life. And I think animation would be a good, first step on
yeah.
something like that rather than making it like a live action looking like a video game kind of like
It would have
animation's
the
cool.
uncanny valley pretty hard. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a great show
Well,
that like got canceled for some reason. It was really good. It was called Outer Space. I think it was called Outer Space. And it was an animated series and it started as a animated pilot on YouTube. Like the guy
hmm
created the character, he animated it and made the whole thing. And like he did it himself. This wasn't like an AI thing.
yeah,
This was years ago. And it turned out to be like a really good show, and
yeah.
I would love to be able to see normal people that like me are kind of fed up with what they're seeing on TV to be able to take their own shot at it and say, "Hey, look, like I've been saying on this podcast that I can do better. Let me show that I can do better," type of thing.
Well, one thing I would say, and this is, I mean, it's going to sound very annoying, but filmmaking is surprisingly affordable in a traditional sense sometimes. I mean, if you've got lamps in your house, you've got a cell phone with even a halfway decent camera, and you spend, I
I'm using
mean,
my
you go to
cell
your
phone as a camera right now. Like
exactly, yeah,
this is
and
my
it's
cell phone. It's an app.
significantly better than my webcam here. Yeah,
Yeah.
like so. Like, what I'm saying is that like there's if you go online or you go to your library, get a couple of books. If Chins Could Kill, Bruce Campbell's autobiography is actually essentially a recipe, a step-by-step guide to low budget filmmaking.
I've heard Werner
Um,
Herzog's book about that is good as well.
yeah, and there's always because like the thing about it is that photons haven't changed. Like the lighting tricks that they were using in the 20s and 30s are 100% at your disposal, and you can still do some really interesting stuff. Now, CG when you get into sci-fi, you're getting into a problem because now you need CGI, you need
Well,
makeup, you
you
need
need it though.
costuming.
Like Stargate did
Yeah,
it without it, you know? Like there's
Stalker is
ways to
is
do
three
it.
guys walking through a field. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's ways to
So
do
if
it.
you there are. And I think like something that I think a lot of people underestimate is partially to the benefit of these corporations, the studios. They see these big, impressive CGI sort of things, and they think, well, I can't do that, so I'm shut out of this business. But then you look at things like Obsession or Get Out that are really simple, and you think, and you get to the heart of it. The best films are two really good actors sitting in a room that's lit and shot in an interesting way with an interesting color composition, all of which you can do with just what you have around your house if you just think it through
Yeah.
and think manage your expectations and make a plan and like look to your you can if you ask filmmakers how to make a movie, they will just goddamn tell you there's nothing they love talking about more. It's
Yeah.
really
Bragging.
tiresome.
Yeah.
But if you're like my wife just got her agent for directing and screenwriting. She's been an actor for 20 years and on stage, and then she switched to TV. And as soon as she got into TV and film, she like every time she got a job, she would be talking to the crew, she would talk to the DOP, she would talk to them, and she would talk, well, how do you do this and how do you do that and what do you do that? She talked to one of her directors one time and just said, like, yeah, I mean, how do you shot list anyway? She's like, come to my house this weekend, I will teach you how to shot list. I have nothing to do when I'm bored. And they spent 2 days and now she knows how to shot list. Like the information is out there and the knowledge is out there. You have to manage your expectations. You have to manage your expectations on budgeting. You have to manage your expectations on output, and you have to manage your expectations on what you can really do. But you still have that capacity to do that. I like what you're describing with like feed my book into an AI
Yeah.
and have it pop something out. I think that would probably there's a thing we do that's sort of a cousin of storyboarding called previs, where we will make a little our VFX guys will make a simple 3D framework of like the scene, and we'll move the camera around a little bit, and it's part of virtual production. We do it for really complicated sequences to when we need to plan out the lighting grid in advance. I could see something along the lines of that being used for AI as like a brainstorming tool. Like I feed my book in, it pops out something, and I can say, well, I don't like that, and I don't
Yeah.
like that,
Change
and I do
this,
like that,
change
and I do
that.
like that.
Yeah.
And then I can take that and I can use that to start planning like a pilot or a
Mhm.
screenplay or something like that. I don't think it's ever going to be able to create a final product. And I
No,
think
I
it's
don't either.
always going to be kind of
I don't either.
limited. But I
I
mean,
think it
yeah,
would
because
be
it's
a
always just too
very
derivative. Yeah.
interactive process where you're kind of
Yeah.
spending a lot of time going over frame by frame, change this, change that.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're going to have to give it a ton of direction in order to get like what you actually want out of it, you know, to the
Yeah.
point where you might spend more time telling it what to do than like just making
Yeah.
it yourself. But again, like,
I,
you know, learning how to do
it's hard to
VFX
tell.
would probably be pretty difficult.
It is pretty difficult, but it's like it is also doable. And then you can do it and you can do exactly what you want to do.
I'm
You're
sure
not
there's
dependent on these
tutorials on
prompts.
YouTube on how to do
There are
it.
so many. There's the blender make a donut thing, which I'm always about halfway through. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, this is it's also dependent on how much time you have, which is another big thing. This is why the best filmmakers in the world are children on TikTok who are coming to eat me and all my friends in this business. But what I'm trying to get at though is that um, one, you can't get rid of art. I mean, my favorite was in the early days of AI. I saw this article. This woman had made a completely AI generated YouTube personality. She created him from full stop. All of his lines, all of his scripting came from an AI. It was trained on other AI people, and I really love like she was like, now we can make art without artists. And I'm like, my friend, did you use a new technology in an interesting new way to create a new work that said something about the world? You haven't replaced the artist, my friend. You have become the artist. And I think That is always going to be there, and there's no way to get rid of it. And the second thing about this is that, like, if I mean, storytelling belongs to everybody, and the democratization of it is the starting point, not the end point of it. They can they can shove streamers down your eyeballs to the point where they can buy up every last film ever made and make it so that the only thing you get to see is Beauty and the Beast and Jurassic Park 7. I don't know why we're still making these,
Yeah.
and they can
The
do
last
that
one
over
was
and over
so
again.
bad. The last Jurassic Park was so bad.
But like they can't really stop you. And even if like we do, and even if AI does end up destroying the film industry and putting me and all my friends out of business, and we just get nothing, but you go on Netflix now and you just hit a button and it just produces Friends, but more Friends somehow. Then all that means is like you were saying before, people will vote with their feet, they'll leave, they'll start going to the theater again, they'll start reading again, and eventually one of them will be like, "Hey, I think I can put this on my cell phone." Hey, wait, man, like Barry, just get over there for a second and say what we were talking about before, but say it to Linda. And Linda, if you can just react, oh, you know what, the lighting, would it be great if there was like a dramatic shadow over Barry's face when he was talking? Because he's talking about something really intense. So we're gonna do that. Now you can only see his eyes. And oh wait, I'll move this light over here. And oh, it catches his eyes. And like, congratulations, you've reinvented filmmaking. You
Yeah.
cannot. This is like human artistic expression is like the Hydra. Like,
Mhm.
great, you killed all the filmmakers and you convinced poor old 86-year-old Martin Scorsese to use an AI program. Congratulations, you haven't won. There's 100 more baby Scorseses coming, and they're going to take
Yeah.
you down too. So yeah, I
Mhm. Yeah.
mean,
And the great thing
yeah,
is like there's so much great IP just on
hmm
Audible alone for people who decide they want to do it, you know? Like there's some really great stuff out there that
yeah,
I would love to see make it to the big screen or into a series. And
yeah,
it's just going to take the right person to go, "Hey, we need to go back to authentic storytelling again and screw this blueprint of how we're going to be
yeah,
make the most money on and do the least amount of work. And like, I just want to make a good movie or a good series,
yeah,
and there's that IP
absolutely,
is
yeah,
out there.
yeah. And I think that's really true. I think you can't stop it. You can't stop art. You can't stop people creating things.
Yeah. That's why I
Life's got
made
to
it
go on.
currency
People
in
got
my
to go
book.
on.
It's like it's one of the constant things about humanity is we're not going to stop producing art. It's
Yeah,
just going to keep coming and things will change. And like I said, I think there's going to be a massive correction within Hollywood at some point, probably sooner rather than later. And we
yeah,
could have a couple of years of really bad or very few films and TV shows coming out. But like you said, some indie producers going to figure out a new way to do things, or they're going
yeah,
to come up with a new style, and people's tastes are going to shift. Like
yeah.
I have a 13-year-old stepbrother that you can't force him to watch a movie or a TV show at this point. Like he just doesn't have the attention span for it. You can't
hmm
force him to do it. And like I tell him, I'm like, dude, like this is, you're gonna want to know these things when you get older.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna meet people that are gonna have watched these movies and you're gonna have like zero reference point. But I don't know, maybe all of his friends are gonna be like him. And
I,
we're maybe movies will die like boomers and Fox News and all of that. I
I
don't
mean,
really
no,
know what's going to happen, but like
I,
something's going to change in the near future, I think.
and it'll be replaced by something else because we will
Yeah.
keep telling stories. We'll keep doing that. I mean, like, hey, Yojimbo's a great movie. So was Last Man Standing. So was The Fistful of Dollars. And so is the next Yojimbo we make. We're just going to
Yeah.
keep making Yojimbo no matter what. And I
Yeah.
think, and that's going to be a-okay.
Yep. All right,
Yeah.
Liam, I think we covered it. I could talk to you all day, bitch about Hollywood all day and bitch about
Yeah.
all the books that I would love to see become movies, but we'll let you get out of here and get back to work. And I
Oh, thanks.
appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I'll send you my email over on Podmatch, and next time you write another book, you shoot me an email and come back on and promote, and hopefully we'll sell you some
Yeah.
copies.
Oh, promote. I should probably
Yeah,
mention
do
that. Yeah,
that.
the book is
Do that.
called the book is called Broken Interstellar. My name's Liam Begley. The book is available on Amazon, Kobo, Smashwords, Itch. It's priced at $1. which is
Nice.
basically just the smallest amount I could possibly charge for it. I just want
Please
people to
read me.
read it, reviewed it. It's DRM free. If you buy a copy and you know a friend who you think would really enjoy it, don't feel bad about emailing that, but maybe both
Very
of you
cool.
write a review. That would be very nice.
Yeah. Very
Um, I can all the stores and my social media links are all found at www.liambegley, LIAMBEGLEY.ca. And
all
that'll
right.
take you to a nice clean little page where you can get everything. I've got a Substack that I do not update more than once a month or so, but if you want to hear me talk about Star Trek a surprising amount and a little bit of Kant and von Clausewitz gets in there somewhere, then that's where to go. And if you want to hear me complain about landlords and the mayor of Vancouver, the current mayor of Vancouver, BC, where I live, go onto my Blue Sky, and you will get a lot of local Vancouver politics from a very angry edge. There's a place
Very
called Yaletown. I don't like it. It's in a neighborhood far away from me, and I despise them. But that's Broken Interstellar is the book. It is a union workers space odyssey. www.liambegley.ca. And yeah,
perfect.
thank you so much for having me on.
No problem, man. I'll put the link down in the description of the podcast so people can just click on it and head over to your website. And I lived in San Francisco for 5 years, so I can totally relate to pitching about the city that you live in. All
Right
right.
on.
Been a
This has
pleasure.
been a total pleasure. All right.
Awesome. Thanks. Take it
You have a
easy.
great
Good night,
day.
everybody.